I want you to imagine for just a second a world where prospects, rather than you having to try to convince them to meet with you, you having to convince them to do business with you, that it was the exact opposite. That you communicated in such a way where you became irresistible to the prospect, where the prospect says to themselves, feels a certain way that they can't help but want to be in business with you. They can't help but to hire you because of how you communicate. You become so desirable. You're the perfect real estate agent for this prospect that you almost seduce them because the feeling is so powerful. And when I say seduce, I'm not talking about in a way that is maybe what somebody might consider dishonest or ingenuine or disgenuine, but rather coming from a place that is so valuable. That's probably a better word. So valuable. Prospects valued you so much that you became irresistible. So in today's video, we're going to do that. I'm going to walk you guys through how to attract clients like a magnet, where you can communicate so elegantly, so powerfully that people are just drawn to you, that you can get away, you can ditch the pitch. You don't have to convince, you don't have to feel sleazy and slimy and salesy, but prospects come to you with ease. Prospects agree to do business with you with ease. So let me share my screen and we can get started. So how to attract clients like a magnet. So the first thing that we need to look at today are the principles to becoming irresistible. Number one, we're going to communicate that you are in high demand. Number two, we're going to communicate that you don't need any more clients. And I need you to have an open mind here for you to learn something from today's show. Number three, speaking against your own interest. Number four, knowing the prospect's deepest, darkest secrets. Number five, getting prospects on the edge of their seats. Sort of like a movie, like a thriller does in a movie. We're going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to show you how to do all five of these in today's episode so that you can, in fact, become irresistible. So let's start with number one. Communicating from a place that you're in high demand. So let me give you an example what this could sound like. A prospect might say something like, hey, when can we meet? Well, the amateur, maybe the old you before watching this video, might have said something like this. This is what I hear all the time when I listen to sales calls. I can make any time work. What works best for you? Now, you might look at that and say, well, what's wrong with that, Brandon? I'm providing a good service. I'm making myself available. Well, let me ask you a question. When you call the doctor, is this how it goes? You call the doctor's office and the receptionist says, the doctor is available at any time, any day. What day works best for you? If they did, right, and you should be laughing, that was a joke, you should probably find a new doctor. You should probably find a new dentist. That means that they're just sitting there with no patients, but that's not how it works, is it? No, what happens is you call the doctor's office and they say, we can get you in this day at this time, and then you have to do what? You have to change your entire world around to make it work, to go see the dentist, to go see the doctor, to go see the person that you have identified as a value provider, we'll call it. So how might you respond to something like this? The professional might say, listen, I'm booked with client meetings all week, but if you can move some things around, I could probably make Tuesday at 3 p.m. work. I should be able to fit you in then. So I want you to think about this first principle the same way you do when you call the dentist, you call the doctor, and you look to make an appointment. I want you to communicate a perception to the client that you are in high demand, that there are other people just like this person that also want to meet with you. Let's show some social proof that there are many, many, many homeowners that also want to meet with you. That is the perception that we are looking to communicate. Now, let's talk about principle number 2. This is a mindset of abundance. Now, I understand that this may be difficult for the real estate agents out there just starting their business, that they say, Brandon, I need a client to pay my bills now. You don't understand. Like, I got 1 month left of savings, and if I don't sell a house, dude, I need to go and get a job. Well, that is exactly the point. The point is, if you can communicate like you don't need more clients without the commission breath, you will get just that, more clients. But if you come across desperate, needy for the commission check, needy because you haven't done enough prospecting, and so therefore you are a month away from getting a job, you repel people. You see the difference? So we need to communicate as though we don't need any more clients, which then makes you in what? Higher demand. People want what they can't have. That idea is not an opinion. That is backed by human psychology. So the prospect says something like this: why should I hire you? And it is one of the most difficult questions for amateurs to answer. It makes them so nervous that the prospect, because they're the one asking the question, they are in control. The amateur takes the bait, jumps all over this, and behaves like the mule that the prospect is expecting you to be. The convincing, the salesperson who responds to the prospect where they say jump, you say how high. That is exactly what the prospect is expecting to hear when they ask you, listen, Bob, I am in all control. I make all the decisions here. You are nothing but a sleazy real estate salesperson. I have all the power. You have what I want. You are a dime a dozen. I can go and get anybody. Why should I hire you? To which the mule or the amateur responds with, well, listen, Bob, because I do this and I do this and I do this. And listen, I'll even do it less for the other agent. I'll do it less for what all the other agents are charging. And I'll throw in a home warranty. And I'll throw in foot rubs at the end of every showing if that means you will list your house with me. What can I do, master, that will allow me to list your house? I mean, this is what amateurs are doing every single day. They're taking overpriced listings at commissions that are next to nothing, under ridiculous terms, under ridiculous promises to the seller, in hopes that the seller will list the house. And then what does the seller do? Thank you very much. I'll think about it. I'll get back to you. They meet with a professional, end up hiring an agent who charges more because they got more value. Because you believe in your own mind that the way I need to earn this person's business is by trying to explain all the things, as the mule does, how hard I'm going to work and all these different things. And as soon as you start to do that, and I'll make another video about this concept that I'm talking about right now, which is the more specific you get with what it is that you do to sell homes, the more you commoditize and devalue yourself which then in return gives the seller more motivation to talk with other agents and to shop it around. Because they say, well, listen, Mr. Amateur, listen, Mr. Mule, if you do this, and this, and you charge this, and you're going to throw in that, well, thank you very much. I'm going to go and talk to this other agent to see what they're going to do, what they're going to throw in, and how much they're going to charge. And then it becomes a race to the bottom because we made it about price. So the professional might respond with something like this. They might say, the prospect says, hey, why should I hire you? The professional says, great question. And instead of trying to give you a bunch of BS and sit here to try to convince you to do business with me, like I'm sure all the other agents you've talked to have done, can I just shoot you straight? Which is a universal yes question. Prospect will always say yes to that. You say, Mr. Prospect, the truth is this. I don't know that we should do business. You don't know anything about how I do business, and I don't know anything about you or your home, and so can I make a recommendation? Another universal yes question. Prospect says, well, sure. The professional says, why don't we do this? Why don't you invite me over one day this week and we can simply have a conversation, Mr. Prospect. You can ask me some questions. In return, I can ask you some questions, and then afterwards, I'm sure it'll be clear if working together makes sense or not. And if not, that's totally fine. Does all that seem fair? And of course, the prospect says, well, geez, that's more than fair. Why? Because we haven't pressured them. We haven't tried to convince them of anything, but we offered up a very rational solution that the prospect in their mind says, well, man, that is a great point. I don't know if I should do business with this person. And quite frankly, the same goes for them. And that is a fair exchange, a fair offer is that we meet, that we discover if a working relationship is to be had, and then we introduce the idea rather that it might not be a good fit. And if it's not, it's okay because you don't need more clients. You do business with people that want to do business with you under the right circumstances where there's a clear exchange of value. There's no arm twisting, no discounting of anything. There's nobody taking advantage of anybody here. Principle number 3, speaking against your own interest. So only a person of confidence, a real professional, not only believes, but speaks in a way that is true, which is this. This is something that I absolutely 100% believe in. And the scarcity salesperson, the scarcity entrepreneur, the scarcity real estate agent, whether or not they believe it, cannot communicate it. That the fact of the matter is this: you are not the right agent for every single seller on the planet. And the fact that most people say that they are, that the bias towards that is so deep, is causing them to lose opportunities left and right. Because isn't it reasonable to believe that there are times, situations, people, properties that just don't make sense for you or for the seller? And to think that it is 100% of the time, I think is very dangerous. You aren't the right agent for every single human being on the planet. That is the truth. There are times when it makes sense for that person to work with another real estate agent that is not you. As an example, what if you find that the property is worth $500,000 and the seller isn't interested in necessarily selling unless they got $650,000? Wouldn't it then be reasonable that you, as the business owner, say to yourself, well, I'm not the right agent for you because I am in the business of selling homes, where there are a lot of agents that are in the business of listing homes that don't sell. So we have to speak against our own interests to do a couple things. Number one, it's because it's real. Number two, it's the fastest way to build credibility with another human being. I want you to think about this. I want you to think about a situation where you're looking to consume something. And your guard, like every other humans on the planet, your guard is up, protecting yourself from not being sold, but to get the truth. And let's just say, as an example, you might be looking to buy a new car, as an example. And you're looking at a couple different vehicles. And a car salesman says, hey, rather than try to convince you to buy this Ford Explorer, you might drive this thing and find out you hate this Ford Explorer, and you might find that a Chevy Tahoe is a lot better. And so rather than try to decide that right now, why don't you come in, take a spin, and if it's not for you, I can refer you to a great Chevy dealership right down the road. Now you tell me, be honest, if a car salesman was to communicate that way, do you feel safe? Do you feel as though they have your best interest at heart? I would. And because he's just being honest, isn't it reasonable that the Explorer might not be for you, that the Tahoe, in fact, might be a better fit? We don't know. We've got to take a lot of things into consideration. So the prospect in this example under principle number 3 says something like this. Other agents, listen, are willing to list the home at a discounted commission. Can you discount your commission as well? The amateur says, well, of course, I can match that. No problem. No problem. Where, just like we were talking about, the professional might say something like this. Mr. Prospect, Mrs. Prospect, I'm so glad you brought that up. And would it be okay if I shared one of my biggest concerns? There's another universal yes question. Prospect says, well, sure. This is how you get the prospects to lean in, to engage, to captivate the audience. They're like, wow, your concern. What is your concern? I asked, could you discount your commission? You say, I'm actually glad you brought that up. Can I share with you one of my biggest concerns? Prospect's now leaning in. You say, listen, regardless if we end up working together or not, right? We're always communicating from a place of abundance. Regardless if we end up working together or not. And I'm not suggesting we should or that we will. There are hundreds of agents that would love to discount their commission if it meant that you would list your home with them. And if that's what you want, and it's okay if it is, listen, I might not be the agent for you. But is strategically placed here, if you're more concerned with hiring a professional that will get you the most money in your pocket, then it might make sense for us to continue talking, because commission is what you pay, and what you net in your pocket is something completely different. Does that make sense? Now we're giving the prospect a new world view that they most likely already agree with. Did you catch it? The worldview here is this, that there are times in our life where paying the least amount of money for something ended up being the wrong decision. There are times where we went the cheap route and we regretted it. There are times where the thing that was seemingly less expensive ended up being less valuable. This is the worldview. And we're trying to explain this to the seller that, listen, if your single most concern is to pay the least amount in commission, think about that, be smart. That's not what the sellers are saying. The sellers are bringing up a discounted commission. Why? Because they believe the correlation is that they end up netting more money if they pay less in commission. Is that true? The answer to that is no, it is not true. If one agent sells the house at $200,000 and charges 4%, and another agent is able to sell that exact same house. Well, I'll stick on the first example, $200,000 at 4%, can't negotiate inspections, can't negotiate appraisals, can't negotiate anything. They get railroaded, and that seller ends up walking away with $187,000 as a final sales price. And then the other agent comes in, sells the house at $210,000 because she negotiated up front, and they held their ground throughout the transaction. And now we have a $20-something thousand discrepancy, and a 2% increase in commission. Is the seller better off with the agent that they paid more money to? The answer is yes, because they worked with a professional. That is what we are communicating here. So when I talk about speaking against your own interest, it's to bring up the fact to sellers that you are not afraid of the fact that we might not be a great fit. And if we find that we are not, it is okay, because only somebody that can be trusted, that does a great job, communicates that way. Whereas the scarcity mindset, the person who cannot be trusted, is always convincing, always has the bias towards closing the sale, getting the person to say yes, twist their arm, discount to nothing. That is the person you need to be skeptical of. Where anything and everything they're doing is to just close the sale, is a very repelling person to do business with. When you can speak against your own interest, not only does it portray confidence, but it's the fastest way to build trust and rapport with that of the prospect. Principle number 4, knowing their darkest secrets. All right, so what are we talking about here? Isn't it true and isn't it reasonable that we already know what the common objections will be, what the common questions will be, what most sellers are already thinking way in advance of ever having to meet with a seller? Well, of course, the answer to that is yes. Yes, we do. We absolutely know the common questions, the common objections. And so what if you created a world, imagine this for a second, you created a world where instead of waiting for the prospect to ask you the questions that every seller asks, instead of you waiting for sellers to potentially object or give you a concern, that you brought it up first. You talk about being irresistible to another human being, where you're bringing up their deepest, darkest concerns before them. I don't know if there's another way to portray confidence. I don't know if there is. Because the scared salesperson with zero confidence hides behind every concern. They're hoping and praying that they don't get the tough questions. Ooh, I hope they don't ask that. Let me skate around that one. That's the person you got to be nervous of, isn't it? Versus the person who says, listen, oftentimes there are people that have done this thing or that thing that have questions about this, that, or the other thing. And the person's like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what it is that I was thinking. Now they know they can trust you because you're bringing up things that everybody's concerned with. Now, the counter argument to that is, why would you bring something up ahead of time? Well, because it's going to come up whether you bring it up or not. So I'm going to get in front of it versus try to skate around it. Because if the prospect brings up something and you don't, they beat you to it, you have to be on the defensive. They take the control, the influence back from you. So we're staying proactive. So it's exactly what you see on screen. Bring up the prospect's biggest concerns before they do. It's the best way to build trust, to build credibility. Here's an example. Mrs. Seller, it's not uncommon for sellers to want to list their home for more than what the data suggests. Can I share a quick story from one of my past clients that might be useful in this conversation. There's another universal yes question. What is the seller going to say? No, I don't want to hear that. They're going to say, sure. And then you can use the power of third-party stories, because sellers don't want to be told what to do. They don't believe what you say. They rarely believe what you show them. But social proof has taught us that monkey see, monkey do. Here's what another seller tried to do. Here's what they experienced. Now the seller sees themselves in the other seller's shoes. It isn't you telling them what to do. Hopefully that makes sense. Principle number 5, getting prospects on the edge of their seat. Captivating an audience. This is what great storytellers do. So what great writers do. This is what great directors do that make phenomenal movies. It's to help us, the viewer, get on the edge of our seat, because we are so intrigued, our curiosity, we're so captivated, our attention is so focused. Well, we can do the same thing. Great presenters, just like I said, like movies, hook the audience and demand their attention. So here's an example of what you might do to do that, to become irresistible. Mrs. Seller, there's been something on my mind all week leading up to our meeting today, and I didn't know how I might bring it up. But would it be okay if I shared my biggest concern? Now, when I say that to you, aren't you, as the viewer of this video right now, saying to yourself, oh my gosh, what would you say after that? That's the point. That means that I have hooked you. I've caught your attention. That is what we're looking to do. So let me say it again. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, there's been something on my mind all week leading up to this meeting. Ooh, we're eliciting what? Curiosity, lots of it. And I didn't know how I might bring it up to you today, but would it be okay if I shared with you my biggest concern? The seller's now like, oh my gosh, what is this person going to say? Just the same way you might be asking yourself, okay, Brandon, tell us. You see how powerful it is to use something like this. You might say something like this. I'm being nice to you, so I'm going to give you the answer. Mrs. Seller, many agents won't tell sellers the truth about their home, its condition, or what it's going to take to get it sold. Why? They have a fear that if they don't tell the seller what they want to hear, the seller won't list the home with them. Now, if you're okay with it, I would prefer to shoot you straight and tell you exactly what it's going to take to get your home sold for the highest price, knowing right now that there could be some things you may not want to hear, but I believe it's the right thing to do. Would that be okay? The sellers want an agent to communicate the truth. This is how we get the prospect's permission to be 100% transparent, to be 100% candid. It's how you communicate with confidence. It's how you portray or give the feeling, rather, that you are indeed the right agent for them, that you do, in fact, have their best interest in mind, so much so that you are willing to risk your own. And there is no better way to build influence with another human being than to put their interest, the perception of their interest, ahead of that of your own. So if anything today made any type of sense, like I always do, I will invite you to have a conversation with us and my team about potentially working together in a coaching relationship if you are interested in becoming a world-class salesperson who is not sleazy, not slimy, doesn't pressure prospects, but serves people at the highest level. Then I'm going to put a link underneath this video. Feel free to click on it. We can have a conversation, talk about what coaching together could look like. And like always, you can decide if it makes sense for you or not. Now you can see some of these principles coming to fruition. So if not, it's perfectly okay. I hope you got a lot of value from today's video. I was really looking forward to making today's video because there's such powerful concepts here for you to learn so that you can become so much more valuable in the eyes of the prospect. So if you want to continue to grow your business, become a great real estate salesperson, watch this video right here.